Good morning, good morning. So, as promised, we are here with an Undaunted Raid box opening video. If you're not familiar with how I do these, basically given my audience, given a bit of a news crowd for the most part, we're going to go through and open up packs, we're going to show off some cards, but we're going to pick out a card from each pack to kind of talk about, in terms of some thoughts about the card for Constructed in the upcoming RLE Season 2. So, get a little bit more meat on the bones rather than just showing off cards, although my understanding is that the cards in this set look very, very good. I am excited to see them. The box art certainly looks very good. The pre-release for this set is this weekend. That is Friday, June 23rd, Saturday, June 24th, Sunday, June 25th, and, of course, throughout the following week, some stores go ahead and have pre-releases on a Tuesday or Wednesday. That's fine. So, make sure you reach out to your local game store, see if they're holding a pre-release. If they're not, they can contact Jasco to get set up so that they can start having pre-releases. And this time, to make things easier on stores, Jasco is sending out these pre-release kits, which I also have here. We'll open one of these at the end and maybe do a little draft pick exercise, I'm thinking, with this, like open each pack and think about what we would take from each pack if it was our first pack of a draft, that kind of thing. That's always a little bit fun. Yeah, without further ado, with Undaunted Raid, you will see there is no first edition sticker on this because we are done with having first and limited editions. There's just the one edition of Undaunted Raid. Certainly going to make it easier, for people who get mixed editions, might have had to worry about sorting their collection before and keeping them separate or whatever. Don't have to worry about that now. Just one edition. So any box of Undaunted Raid can contain a Chrome Rare. Because Chrome Rares are back with this set. They are attack cards this time, which means they have cool action art instead of, characters in some okay poses and whatnot. But yeah, at least digitally in the videos I've seen, they look very, very good. So if we're super fortunate, we'll pull one of those. Not really expecting that, but what we will pull in here somewhere, almost guaranteed, right? It's never completely 100% guaranteed, but there should be a secret rare in this box. Because there's going to be a secret rare in every box because there are 6 of them. So no such thing as a bad box in this set, so that's really neat. And yeah, we'll stop stalling. Let's open this guy up, and we'll see we are done with the quirk packs as well. Just sort of stripping down the layers of extra promos and excess stuff. There's also going to be no DLC with this set. Just the good stuff's in the booster packs, right? So let's go ahead and see what good stuff we have in the first one. Packs have a little pull tab to open them that normally I don't struggle that much with. As a reminder, you can always keep your pack wrappers. They have this little skull symbol on the back, which is an indicator that this can be turned in for a redemption point. They recycle these packs. Usually you can either mail them in or you can turn them in in-person events. Usually in-person events on the West Coast, they'll have turn-ins, but not often in other places, but they do have a RLE in Las Vegas in Season 2. So yeah, what do we have here? We have Practical Studies, Sword Cutter, Learning to Harden. Look at this. All Might Cert Night-Eye, Insatiable Appetite Surge. I've seen the XR of this, looks really, really good. Detailing the Plan, Barrier Shield. We have a Rewind Throttle, that's a rare. We have another card here, so we have oh, we do not have an extra. We have a character in this pack because there's going to be a character in every pack now. This pack's a little bit thicker than normal. This is actually 11 cards now because we have a guaranteed character in every pack, which means they're not going to take up these uncommon slots. You're going to see a much nicer mix of your uncommons. So we pick one of these to talk about. We'll just go. We'll talk about the character. We pulled Izuku Midoriya 4. This guy's got a lot of hype surrounding him for competitive-minded people and for people that have been wanting not a good Deku, because all 3 Dekus are actually pretty good in this game, but the 4th one it comes a little more easily. You've got this very easy, powerful 4 enhance on his face. You draw 3 cards to help you with defense. It kind of comes a little bit smoother. You don't have to work quite as hard as the other Dekus have to work sometimes. Deku 2 can just draw super hot and get it done that way, but if not, he's going pretty uphill. So this is probably the closest to Deku 2. You're trading cards for damage, but you're also gaining powerful, so you're incentivized to get some momentum and get real big damage. And yeah, instead of just having to find your card draw elsewhere, he picks up 3 cards on his face to help out with that. They're random cards, so you're going to have to think a little bit about how you're going to use those on defense. You might make sure you go in with 1 good block before you pass the turn, because you can't guarantee anything that has 3 blind ones, or just make sure your deck is packing good block modifiers so that there are no bad ones. So there'll be a little bit that's going to go into building this guy as a deck, but, you know, it's hard not to see him being pretty good in Constructed here. Let's see, I haven't really thought about how I'm going to sort these cards on the side here. I guess I'll just make some space over here. We're playing this out. I do have some sleeves over here in case, you know, for the secret rare, and if I'm mega lucky for Chrome Rare, I'll get that right in a sleeve. There we go. If I talk about characters every time, this is going to go pretty long. I might have to... Probably not quite going to do that. So we have some commons. We do have a lot more custom art even on foundations in this set. So this Confession here has some custom art. Vital Impact, Intense Stare, Crystallize. Alright, now we have 3 cards in the back. So this one actually has an XR. We have a Haymaker. It's a pretty cool rare. We have Sir Night-Eye. And our XR... Ooh, an XR Deadly Fire. Get the nice full art frame on this guy. Alright. Pick one of these. Well, let's just go ahead and talk about Intense Stare. Intense Stare is an interesting card to me. The old card that this is referencing was always pretty good in its time, and this is pretty much the same idea. You get to trade cards in your hand for point committal. We have seen this in this format on Petty Squabbles in a different form, and people are pretty happy to play that card. And, you know, it has another ability, of course, but it's also a lot more limited, right? Your opponent has to be playing something that they have multiple copies of, or that is a spammable ability, and only then can you discard a card to commit it. This just lets you straight up, you know, on your turn as a form, discard at least one card to point at something and take it out. These symbols, you know, certainly Order has a ton of point committal and Death has League Invitation now. All is probably the symbol that is most interested to see this card. Its foundation hate is kind of limited to Hero Killer, I think, off the top of my head. So I definitely see this card slotting into some all decks. Alright, common. This card sorting is gonna be not used to having this many piles. We have a separate pile for the characters now. We're gonna sleeve our XRs. That's always a good idea. Deadly Fire looks really good. Alright. Let's make it nice and easy. We have some, you know, some more like full art foundations, which we've been suddenly getting a little bit more of. Knuckle Sandwich, Sunny to the Big Three, Nejire Wave, and Toya Setsuno. Man, people have talked about Nejire Wave a lot already. So I need to go in that one. I was looking at Knuckle Sandwich a little bit earlier today. This is kind of an interesting card. I should probably hold these up enough to read the text on them, right? So this guy's like 2 low 5's kind of a fine rate, and it's even a pseudo 4 low 5 on its face. Obviously that's not, you know, the dream that's getting you into the deck, but if you're on the punch theme, and this is a good filler for that punch theme on these symbols that do not necessarily have a great ton of punches already. They all have some, right? Evil actually has the old Nomu Relentless Barrage theme going on. Fire has Rapid Punches Hardened Barrage. Order has a bunch of old Deku 1 stuff that it can tap into, but it's nice to have this card to fill in a little low zone punch. You know, the combo enhance makes it a 4 low 7 pseudo 6 low 7, which is some pretty good meaty stats. So if you're on a punch character that doesn't have a lot of stats in their face, i.e. Kendo Rappa, of course, but there are some others, this is kind of pretty interesting. I think this will see a little bit of play, even though it's not the most, it doesn't like stand out the most initially when you're looking at cards. Keep messing with my piles on the side here. We'll figure this out eventually. Some more commons. Crystallize, Rewind Smash, more Stare. Seal of Approval is a rare. Deku 4 again. See, what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about Confession a little bit. So, you know, Confession is pretty interesting. This force your rival to trade a card out of their hand is going to be pretty hit or miss. Sometimes that's going to be really quite bad if they if they are something like Deku 4, or if they're drawing a bunch of cards and they're basically guaranteed to have some cards they didn't really want to hold at the end of their turn. But in a lot of cases, they're trying to carefully craft what blocks they have or whatever, and you're going to disrupt that a little bit with this. It's got a nice +2 mid block on it. Got an interesting deadlock enhance on it, so not the worst card to include a copy or two of, in particular if you are in Death or Evil. If they discard a non-attack to this, you get to burn them for 1, and that will trigger Excited for Blood. So that's very exciting. Or even the Shigaraki Zero Div Foundation from set 1 can trigger off of this, which is pretty funny. Don't know if you would, play that card if this is your only trigger, but you might have more than just this and sort of make it work. Yeah, if you're facing this card, don't ignore it, right? It can be very sneaky, right? It does nothing all game, and then on turn 5 of game 2, you've carefully crafted your blocks, and they're just like, yeah, one of those is just gonna be a random card now. And it's, oh no. or you go down to 1 card in your hand in particular. That's when this stuff is really, really strong. You catch them with 1 card, or they've held their last big trick, their last good breaker block, and now it's just something random. Alright. Next one. There's some lock stuff here. Single spiral. We're not gonna skip over surprise interception for long here. Red Gauntlet is the rare. Look at this. We get the nice rare Kirishima combo here. So Red Gauntlet is a card that some people are pretty excited about. It is a flash move with a couple of responses on it. One of them is a deadlock response, of course, but I destroy 1, you destroy 2 is some nice little, they might call it tempo or whatever, but if a deck has face downs in the early game, they're probably accelerating their build, and you get to disrupt that with this. Otherwise, early game, this can be a bit of a blank flash move, and then later on, you might be using this to set up some destroy count triggers, some stuff like Spear and Shield, the secret rare with Kirishima and Fat Gum on it. But yeah, it's a nice tricksy flash. People are going to be checking this card out and trying to play it, so if you see something on these symbols that could be playing this, maybe think a little bit before you get very aggressive with flipping stuff. Stuff like calling for backup that you can kind of freely flip pretty early in the game that you don't necessarily have to. You might wait a little bit until you have more total foundations, but the other thing that can happen on the Earth symbol, someone can seizing the advantage into this, and that's a beating, right? You're going to get 1 flipped, they're getting an extra foundation, they're adding 2 speed to their flash move. I would expect to see that line tried out a fair bit as well, especially in something like an Earth Overhaul. We can then +2 damage this as a response as well. There's some synergy there. So yeah, this is an interesting card that we're going to see around, I think. Okay, Heroic. Adaptable, I think it's the first one of those we've seen. That guy Roundup. Surge. Yu Hojo is an interesting character, not quite all the way in the back, because we have our secret rare, Chronostasis trigger. This is one I'm pretty happy to see. I'm gonna be happy to have an extra copy of one of these in addition to what I'll get in my pre-release and in my boxes and whatnot. So this card doesn't necessarily look like much at first, but it's actually kind of a big deal. +2 Breaker 2 blocks are universally good in this format. People play all of them that exist, I believe, unless I'm forgetting one somewhere. So it's sort of guaranteed playable, especially as a fort if attack. Especially if you're on the evil symbol, you can change the zone at will, and you get this little threat if they take it. And the enhanced... This is a lot of little things that add up to some good outcomes. And obviously, if you're Chronostasis himself, you're going to get to play this guy twice and freeze 2 while committing 1. Certainly good. People are very excited about Lock, and he just said his face basically just freezes 2, and that's just what he does. Draws a couple extra cards. And this Evil Enhance, it's quite nice getting this on a 4 difficulty attack. We have this on full cowling 5%, but that's a 5 diff, and that's a bit more of a commitment in your deck building space. Whereas this guy, you can lob out, you can make it whatever zone you think you might need it to be, and pressure, you know, a recovery girl or a Momo or an eraser head to, you know, find a block for this, and possibly get them to use a resource or use a fetch, use a tutor or something like that they don't really want to on your little 3-speed for 4 attack. But as much as anything, that Breaker 2 is going to come into play a lot. I'm pretty sure. So let's leave this up. Certainly one of the secret rares I had top of mind for one I'm going to want 4 copies of for sure. Alright, and the secret rare replaces... Oh yeah, it replaces a rare or ultra rare in the pack, of course. That is as per normal. Alright. Best self-doubt, big appetite. This is not a gigantic set, but it is a bit of a larger set, 122 cards. A lot of booster sets have been, you know, 108 lately. So you're going to get a little bit more variety in your commons and whatnot. We have Hot-Blooded as our rare. And Hikichi Tengai. I pronounced that name correctly on the first try. Let's talk Hot-Blooded for a minute. Hot-Blooded, this is a weird card. So if your rival is blocked this turn, which is you kind of, you know, you're playing the game or whatever, locking an attack to printed speed and damage is really going to have a lot of dependencies on how good the printed stats of your attacks are. Kind of a niche ability. Not sure if this is going to see much of any play outside of Rappa. I mean, I could see a Gale Force Punch deck maybe that's discounting Gale Force Punch somehow being kind of in on this, but the Rappa form is quite as effectively commit 1 foundation for 2/2 once per turn. There's nothing wrong with that rate. That's a pretty good rate. And, you know, Rappa, of course, is much better at passing his checks than others, so this is going to be probably a pretty big card for Rappa because what you know, his face does not give stats, as we mentioned earlier, and he's going to be looking for them where he can find them. And stuff like this, and like he has another card that does something like this, where you're trading some difficulty for some stats, you know, flexibly on command when you want to, depending on your situation, should be pretty good for him. Water here. Alright. This next pack here. I don't think we've seen an ultra rare yet. We got our secret rare. We haven't got any ultra rares yet, so we got a bunch of those coming. Yardage, and sooner or later we'll stop just talking about the shiny card in every pack and start hitting up some commons here. Just we can kind of run through those. We do them all early without limits. Dataro Sakaki, we have another XR. We're going to see 2 XRs before we see UR. XR Self-Doubt. So this is an XR common. You can see there's a little bit of an extra foil treatment with the waves. There you go. You can kind of really see it there. It's got a bit of a wave pattern in it. They do this with a lot of their XRs. It's always interesting to see the XR treatments that show up in a given set. You know, set 4s were pretty good. I'm sure set 5s are going to be very good as well. That guy in. We should talk about heroic assistance. So this is kind of interesting. It's kind of like a powered up version of Getting a Tour. Getting a Tour flipped to ready up something that your opponent just committed. Heroic Assistance blocks a little bit better and can flip to ready the thing that just got committed and something else. The downside is that this doesn't have the nice, you know, little +1 speed boost that Getting a Tour does, that in certain decks is actually really good. This is just here as the anti-stun, anti-commit, and the deadlock threat, but has the ally keyword, so it's going to fit into some decks for that. Certainly, I would expect to see this coming out of a lot of sideboards for sure. Main deck may be limited to the ally theme, we'll see. But, you know, if you're running the point commander, you're running the Jolt, you're running the League Invitations, you might end up feeling forced to hit this thing first, but you have to get through this before you can hit anything else. Should be a pretty relevant card. Alright. Precision Seal Strike. See, we're 7 or 8 packs in. We're still seeing some commons for the first time here. That's pretty cool. Surgical Sandwich. Body Rejuvenation. Pass Through Walls as our rare foundation. And we have Kirishima again. Oh, what do I want to pick out of this? Ooh, look at this. This is just kind of a weird one, right? So, you enhance commit, you show them a foundation, you get speed. So, in most cases, your bottom floor for this is commit for +2 speed, which is kind of fine. In limited play, particularly, I would be giving a lot of thought to this card because this sort of effect where you can just pile a bunch of speed on something to close out a game is very good in limited usually. If you're drafting, probably go after these, but you unconstructed, there's more and more good 3 difficulty cards these days. If you're running some of those, you can commit this for 3 speed. Commit for 3 speed's a lot. That is a lot to be putting on something for a commit. It is the only thing this card does, which is kind of appropriate because it's very good when it's at its strongest. There's even a 4 difficulty foundation in this set. I don't know off the top of my head if it shares any symbols with this. But, yeah, commit +3 speed. Very good, very real, very something that you might want to consider if you are piling in some of those league invitations or what have you. Oh. There we go. Commons. Alright, where are our Ultras? We haven't actually seen one yet, right? Yeah. Okay. On the bottom side of the box, which is a pretty good sign. It means these boxes probably aren't mapped at all, right? Or they're certainly not all going to be like this. Belonging to Hardened, Season Brawler, Seal Strike, Plummeting Punch, Piercing Barrage, locked up. There it is. This does not share with... Look at this. Okay. So, maybe we're not getting +4 speed, but... Hey, it's Inverted Knife Throw. And we have Fat Gum too. Alright. So I've heard some people have, sort of opened their box opening boxes and not gotten a Fat Gum too. So it's good to get one of those. Although some decks are going to want to run more than one Fat Gum 2 to try to... Well, we're already talking about him. So, Fat Gum 2, first of all, he does have a little bit of errata. He cannot be your starting character at the beginning of the game. Obviously, his effect makes him your starting character, so that has to be able to work. That said, Fat Gum's a pretty interesting guy. He's a character that expressly wants to play a not passive, but a defense-first game. He wants to be doing some attacking, some poking for value. You try to play some attacks that draw him some cards or whatnot, so he can get his build off and keep working on getting himself set up for the big Fat Gum 2 transformation turn. One thing you might see people trying to do is to run a bunch of these Fat Gum 2s and play cards like Duplex, like Measured Violence, that can build in a copy of Fat Gum 2 mid-turn, albeit with some effort, and draw 3 more cards. And technically, rules-wise, reset that twice per turn because of some funky stuff where the new copy of Fat Gum 2 is now your starting character, not the other one, so it's a different set of abilities on a new card. But don't know how often that specifically is going to come up. You only need to flip and commit so many things usually. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how well this guy does. It's probably going to be one of those things where, someone who's good at the game is going to make them their pet deck, and then they're going to be doing really good with it. And nobody else can play it. Right? It's one of those decks, right? But yeah, Fat Gum pretty cool. We've had Razor Slash. Alright. Ren, Ninja Chicken Kick. Rikia. And XR Red Riot's the coolest. So we've got a little bit of a web pattern. We've seen this on some cards before. The lines, they went with that with this card. And this card's getting some hype. This Red Riot's the coolest. So it's an innocuous, it's an innocuous little spam foundation. It's a 1/5. It doesn't have a great block, but like playable or committed flip for +2 damage is very nice. Especially, some of these, on a character that needs to find damage, you might be putting this in an Eraserhead deck, for instance. The Deadlock Enhance, a little bit limiting, but, we did get a bunch more hardened and red cards in this set that you might be interested in playing. But yeah, if you see this on the board, don't forget about it. You might do some math and think that you're not dead to something, and then they flip this guy, and oh, wait a minute, I am dead to this. It is playable while committed, so definitely keep track of it if your opponent plays one out against you. And don't discount putting a copy or 3 or 4 in your deck. Just means we're building up. We're gonna get ultra rares sooner or later. Back grapple, Foresight. We're not gonna go this whole time without talking about Surprise Interception. Rewind Smash. The second inverted. Is the back-to-back packs for this? Not quite, but almost. Alright. And Sora Mitsutabe. Yeah, Surprise Interception. I am on a bit of a bent where I'm rather looking to play this card. There is some excitement out there for Ochako 1 coming out with this set, with cards like Chimera Kraken and just more face-up momentum stuff that she can use. Surprise Interception is a very good answer to that character. The attack that they want to put in their momentum suddenly has to stick in their card pool. They don't really know about it in advance. You just sort of partial block with this guy, and then, their plans are a little messed up. I believe... it's not the only card ever that does something like this, but it gives another couple symbols access to it. It can always just be a +1 mid block. You do not have to play the response necessarily. It is, of course, also good against Electric Jolt. This is sneaky pretty relevant in this format. It's the missing +1 block for the good symbol on its 1/5s, right? Or Bonds of Friendship is a 1/6 with a +1 high, and it has Self-Sacrifice with a +1 low. Not as a +1 mid on a 1/5 foundation, so... good symbol eaten well on those spam block modifiers. Stop that. This is Sword Practical Adaptable. Starwave Surge locked up. Oh. Calorie Counter and Sir Night Eye. Let's take a minute talking about Spiral Wave Surge. This is a fun card. So I did preview Nejire's kit. I believe this was a attack I did not get to preview, so we get to make up for a little bit of lost ground here. So, the +1 low block is certainly pertinent for your 4 mid 4. It is a pseudo 4 mid 6, provided you feel like you can afford the 1 health. It's obviously a good base stat line, and if they block it, you get a check boost. This is sort of... I've talked about before how Ninja has these 2 cards that are like a split of Double Jab Pummel. This is a check boost side of it, and honestly, if you just lob this out and just get the +1 on them blocking it, that's still just fine, right? You've played this nice poke at 6 damage, they have to respect it. They block it, and you can follow up with another attack at a little bit of a reduced cost. It is your next check to play a card too, so you want to play a 3 difficulty foundation or something, that's also fine. You get the boost on that. And, Charge and Fury keywords. The Fury keyword in the air symbol is something to pay attention to. We could see this in some Bakugo, could see this in some All Might. This card, one of those 4 difficulty attacks that, it's a 4 diff. It's not a finisher. It's not a big super flashy move, but it's got the tools to put in some work here. I think we're about halfway through the box here. Grapple. Resign. That might be our first Resign we've seen. Could be wrong. Stamp out. Storm of Blades. We finally have an Ultra. Oh, and here's Nejire herself. Nejire is very good. Storm of Blades is a funny card. We'll talk about Storm of Blades. This is... So there's a little, this is a bit of a chunky text box. It's a bit to process, but Storm of Blades is a one check that wants you to play 4 full copies of it in a 50-card deck. Because the dream here is that you Storm of Blades, and then somewhere in the top 5 cards of your deck is another Storm of Blades. Notably, this is after this attack resolves. It does not need to hit. You just play this 3 mid-3, and you are going to get a free one afterwards. So for your one check, provided you're on a 3 damage theme, of course, you are getting a double attack. You're getting 2 attacks for the price of 1, and if you're... So, at least 6 damage worth of moves split across 2 attacks. And if you happen to Yassi and hit another Storm of Blades, you're going to get 3 moves, right? You might even be playing a character that can do some deck stacking stuff with this. So, on its face, the baseline of this card, you look at 4/1, 3/3, has some cute ability, whatever, but when decks really build around this and really try to make it work and do some stuff to try to support it, you could see some Storm of Blade decks really popping off, and it could be a little scary. We'll have to see it. It's going to be, a crazy, deck mad scientist kind of thing to show up, right? It's a one check, and a lot of people just won't run those, kind of including me, to be honest, but I'm going to die to a Storm of Blade string at some point. I'm like, yep, that happened. That is a thing that is going to happen at some point. Foresight, Insatiable, just a little bit point blank shot. Bad Absorption as our rare, and Shindemoto as our character. What do we like in here? Mega jumping out. We'll talk about Shin. We haven't talked about too many characters. So Shin, pretty interesting guy. So he might be, I'd have to do a full survey. He might be the best character overall at leveraging those if you've played this from not your hand cards, because first of all, he gets to do it twice per turn, and some characters like Compress can, but they have to jump through hoops, right? They have to get the cards in their momentum first. The cards just have to be in his hand, right? They just have to be cards. Sorry, he was willing to play normally, getting little hiccups here. And so this form reads, first of all, trigger a played not from hand effect, which of course is on all of Overhaul's attacks and some number of other ones throughout the set, especially on the evil symbol. And there's some chance that you're going to get a little bit of a difficulty reduction and some 3 speed on it. Of course, you want to hit that once or twice, but I think if you can build a Shindemoto deck that is just kind of happy that it's triggering those abilities, if you find the right set of attack lineup to play and supporting foundations, you could have something, right? You have a 720 that's getting some synergy effects, that's probably going to get 3 speed on at least 1 move, if not 2. And the little hand knowledge isn't that bad either. So he definitely has some potential. He was on my top prospects video a little while ago. Hard to know without, trying some different builds with him and shuffling him up, but there's a chance there's something here. Alright. There's a slash again. Another one we probably won't go through without skipping it at some point. Claw Stopper. Red counter! Ooh, and Spiral Blast. We got a good ultra rare for sure. And Fat Gum 1. Yeah, we talk about pet cards here. We talk about red counter. I love red counter. So, a 5 difficulty 5 high 5 is a fine line for your poke attack. It has that enhance makes it very compelling to your opponent to try to block it, but it has the 5 speed on it. And 5 speed is relevant, right? Especially if you're making a little bit faster, speed resets that bring it back to printed are still just going to bring it back down to 5, which is kind of depressing for your opponent. So, especially in a character that's putting some speed on things, this is probably goes right into the Eraserhead punch angle that people are talking about off of Void. There could at some point be a Death Eraserhead punch angle, but Relentless Barrage still exists. That was a thing for a moment back in set 1 that people were trying to do. Maybe getting a little bit of help from Kirishima here. But also, just in general, and you can always block with this, right? You can always block with this and get that card pull remove online. As long as 1.3 million volts continues to be popular, this is going to have obvious appeal, as well as against stuff like Home Run Common and whatnot. So be ready to see this card. Certainly give it some thought about slotting it into your decks if you have some 5-dip space to work with. 8 left. Right, these videos always take a bit. Keep this under an hour. We've probably won here. Yeah. Energy suction. Energy suction. Yes. Hey, there's a normal deadly fire. Proposed sloshed. They just did this cool, funny stuff with Daedro's art. Twisty surroundings and another fat gum. Yeah, Twisty surroundings is gonna be good, people. I think if you've had Coda played against you, you've sort of noticed that the 2 check, you're just having effectively a break or 2 at any given time is pretty spooky. It does have the out where you can fail it and get out of your combat phase. But unlike Coda, this doesn't just blow up if you hit them hard enough. It's just here. And unlike Coda, it has that Breaker 2 mid block we talked about before. Breaker 2 plus 2 mids have been universally played and universally good in this format. We're adding a couple more in this set, and Evil's getting 2 of them that you can play. And the card sitting on the table. If you play the card on the table, you can also just have Breaker 2. You don't even have to block with it, right? It's just Breaker 2 the card. Very, very worthwhile asset to be playing. We haven't seen a whole ton of asset played, in this format. Aside, we've seen some of the 4 difficulties from League of Villains creeping in, but I think this one's we're gonna see some more green cards. You should probably put a little bit of thought into your deck building about, can I do anything about assets, and is there anything I can include without too much trouble that helps me out here. More heroic. Pennies, Cinecoil, Apple, Food, Bubbles. Action, Borrowed Goods. Oh, Borrowed Goods is an ultra. And another Ninja Ray. Alright, it's pretty straightforward. We already talked about Ryuku Agency trainees on my other video, so that would be a little bit of a silly repeat. Talk a little bit about food here. So, we've seen Forcing Surrender get used as anti-Tokuyami device. Food technically adds to that pile if you have some means to play it. Certainly flipping to effectively gain 2 health and maybe mess with some non-attacks and card pool plans isn't the greatest effect, but it also has the enhance if they don't have any cards in the card pool, your attack gets +1 speed. In a character like Tabe, much as it was with some old King of Fighter characters, if you are consistently keeping their card pool empty, cards like these can pile up and be very good. So I think Tabe certainly plays it. For other decks, you might see it as some sideboard tech against some card pool shenanigans, or if they really, really want the speed, they can use this for a means to get a little +1 speed boost. I don't know if any decks want it that badly to do this unless they are Tabe or whatnot, but not an irrelevant card, not exactly a coaster entirely. Just give it some thought if you're having trouble with Tokuyami or something like that locally and you're not playing, Forcing Surrender symbols. Grapple. Uabami picked this up. Alright. Uabami can pick up Fat Grapple. I think that's a thing. And this Claw Stopper, Crystal, Chokeslam, and Mimic. Oh man. So yeah, we'll talk some Chokeslam. So this is not just Selkie only, believe it or not. In hints too. If they take this attack, your next is getting 5 speed. They kind of have to interact with this, right? And if you put damage on it, then that is a huge speed bonus. You know, we've seen Setup Strike get play to do its thing, do what it does, and it's very good at doing that thing. Chokeslam or its 2-check gets you a Mega Setup Strike that is also a throw that you can pile damage on, get momentum out of, and if they're really low, you get to go grab something difficulty 4 or less from your discard pile. This is pretty compelling. You know, it is a slam. It doesn't play into like a range theme or a punch theme or a weapon theme if you're doing anything like that. So that may hinder it a little bit in seeing play, but you know, there are certainly some angles, some decks that could be pretty excited to play something like this. I mean, I would even just put this in a Nomu. Like, yeah, you have to block this one. Next deck's still getting a bunch of speed. Maybe that's a little greedy, but it's a card you're going to look at and think about including in some decks that, especially decks that have a big powerful that they can pop off with or something like that this can set up. And also decks that can put damage on this guy, right? Does this share with Gunhead? I think this shares with Gunhead. That's something to think about a little bit. So the Pistol Chokeslam Gunhead deck. Haven't heard that name in a minute. Alright. Flurry of Punches. Energy Fist. Coolest. And you know, we have Quick Restore. We're just getting all the Yuhojo stuff here. Kendo Rapid. We have all the Yuhojo stuff. We have an XR Crystallize. Let's see, what do we got? Pattern on this guy. Holding up to camera makes it a little harder for me to see the angle. I think this is just a straight foil, or it's just his crystals are foil. Oh, that's pretty neat. Alright, I think that's our 4th XR of the bunch, which means that should be our last one, in all likelihood. Alright, what's cool here? A bunch of stuff that's cool here. Oh, we had 2 crystallize in this pack. This is about energy suction a little bit. Does not count towards the progressive difficulty to play your attacks. This is, you know, pretty interesting. Obviously, you know, Rakia plays well with him. You see, he has that explicit gain health theme. You could have a character, this doesn't share with Jiro or anything like that, but it does share with Mandalay. I was very interested to see a card like this, right? That turns her -2 difficulty into a true -2 difficulty because this thing isn't counting, which is very relevant. And yeah, even, you know, there was an old card like this in the Yu Yu Hakusho set that even when people weren't really doing anything with the progressive part of it, still saw some play sometimes because this kind of, you know, if your 1/5 foundation gets you a couple health on your attack string and has a nice low block, that's kind of a fine rate to get from your 1/5. It is after your attack deals damage, gain 1 health, so you don't get to like do cheeky stuff with this on defense, but you could even have things that are adding foundations to your card pool where this ends up being relevant, or, you know, stuff in that space. I'm thinking like, let's see, Momo doesn't put things in her card pool. I'm drawing a blank, but the cards like this tend to sneak into the picture more than you expect them to. This, and Rippa. Right. Yeah. 4 to go? 5 to go? 4 to go. And then 6 pre-release packs. Feel Studies, Lockdown, Appetite, Self-Doubt, Resign, Slash, Surge, Looking, Bubble, Restraint, and more Deku 4. This set has a couple of those 6 diff throws. See, we could talk about Resign, but I'd just be talking about Mandalay some more. Yeah, we're talking about 6 diff throw, so there's an ultra rare as well that is a 6 diff throw. And it's kind of an interesting prospect, right? If you're going to play 6 difficulty for something, you might as well get some guaranteed damage out of it, right? And if they want to block with the foundation, it's actually really hard. So you're not even necessarily just going to do half with this. This will just land a fair portion of the time. And one way or the other is giving your attacks a little speed for the turn. This is the kind of card that lends itself to the idea of running some sort of quote-unquote control deck and having a quote-unquote late-game win condition, because this probably isn't coming in to help a turn 2 kill string. But if you've built up to 10, you're up against deadlock, or maybe even gone into deadlock, you can definitely afford to play a card like this and get the guaranteed hit. It's a good to just, throw down as a poke. They probably don't want to block it if you're in this handcrafting state. And then, you get your 6 damage, you move on. It is kind of like in those late game situations where you both have a bunch of foundations and you're just both trying to make it good hands, this is kind of a hard card to deal with. So in decks that are sort of expressly trying to do that, I think I can see this in like a Fat Gum deck even, for example, coming in and, on his big turn, it's going to help secure the kill, and on the other turns, it is expensive, but your character by definition is building a bunch of foundations, so you kind of don't mind it that much. Pretty interesting card. I think a lot of people are just going to like instantly coaster this, but it could warrant some consideration actually in a few spots as like the 1 or 2x. Steel Strike. Alright, some commons. Maximum Hardening, no time to waste. A nice Levitate. Talked about that one before, and more Rappa. What's cool here? Human Garbage is cool. Human Garbage is pretty cool. We can talk about some Human Garbage. Not really much to say about this. Granted, it's an ally foundation if you happen to be on that theme for whatever reason, but 1/5 that self-readies once per turn up to 3 times over the course of the game. Basically, if you're in a self-mill character like Yu Hojo, like Tokuyami, like various water ranged themed decks, this does an amphibious impression for at least a little while, and that's pretty good. That card got banned, right? So again, this is not much to say about it. It's just a good spam foundation that you have to start thinking about what you're running. I think a lot of people just kind of piling every available spam that has some text in their decks, and at some point they're going to have to pick and choose, not only between their spams, but between swapping them out for some higher difficulty ones. But self-ready 2 or 3 times, not bad at all. I believe we may have 1 or 2 more ultra rares in this pack. May have mistaken a normal rare for an ultra rare at some point. Vice versa, rather. Fist. Red Riot, Scented Coil, Body, more. Hey, Rejuvenating Smash. One of the good ones for sure. And Amajiki. Pet card. Bad Guy Roundup. I keep looking for ways to play this card so far. I haven't actually completed a set 5 deck list yet, but a lot of them are trying to play this. So if you're familiar with Instant Shining Flash, that card is pretty much universally considered good. This is Instant Shining Flash with 2 different symbols on it and some different properties. It's a high block instead of a low block. It's a low attack instead of a high attack. It has Powerful 2 on it, and it will very often draw you a card. This is mostly better than Instant Shining Flash, give or take. You might want different keywords or whatever. So yeah, pretty exciting card. I've tried to put this into some Fire Fury packages so far, but yeah, this is not just like a random Fat Gum card. I would expect to see this card probably a bunch, especially, again, people talking about Ochako. You have a character like Mirio that uses momentum on his face. You've got All for One picking up steam from the last set, and so on and so forth. People are going to try to play Mr. Compress. Majiki, it goes on and on and on and on, right? Yeah, expect this one to be showing up in some top cut deck lists, I'm pretty sure. Unless people just aren't playing the symbols, basically, right? In our last pack of this box, my redemption pile is encroaching on the mat here. By the way, Ochako Matt, this is from Gen Con of last year. If this year is anything like last year, this year's Gen Con will also have a bunch of cool promos and possibly more cool playmats for you to collect if you go there. So if you are on the fence about going, some added incentives. They did really good with their promos last year, and I'd be surprised if they don't repeat that this year. Wishing the pro Mimicry and Amajiki. Alright, we get to pick one card out of this. It's probably just going to be Mimicry. You know what? Actually, I'm actually going to talk about Ninja John the Big Three, and I'm actually going to talk about this in the context of another card or two, too. So, something this set has that is a little bit unheralded. The Air and Chaos symbol between this card and the Vast Hybrid Foundation from Amajiki, as well as Mirio's unique foundation. The Air and Chaos symbols have access to a level of plopping +1 damage on their moves on a kill string that they haven't had before. And that's going to allow some decks to exist that just weren't real previously. Various Air and Chaos long string decks. I mean, think about an Air Froppy, for instance. Might be a lot more feasible with the addition of these cards, although, the one of them needing momentum kind of complicates her life. But yeah, just something to keep in the back of your mind, if you've been building some Air Chaos decks and not been able to find some damage. It's a self-sacrifice on offense, and we've seen, plenty of decks use self-sacrifices, just counting on that as a kill turn damage boost to some good effect. And you have a couple other unique foundations that'll put +1 damage on most or all of your moves as well. Very notable. Don't miss that going into this next format. Alright, and that gets us through our box. So, yeah, as we kind of noted a few times along the way, we're getting a little bit more of the full custom art foundations, which is pretty cool. You see we're getting the character card in every pack. And that's going to enable them to just do a sealed where you don't have to make people pick out of a store supply of characters. You just get a character in one of the packs that you open, right? So I think we're not going to try to build a sealed deck here, but we're going to, check out the opening of one of these boxes and maybe pick some draft picks out of them and then call it a day here. So, this box at first looks like it just kind of opens up here, and it kind of does, but you have these little sticker tabs. It's not completely loose. I don't want to bring a knife into this. I mean, we're going to try to replicate being at a store, right? So I'm going to assume I can just be a little rough with this and just pull it open. Not quite. I'm not too good at staring these stickers, it looks like. Alright. There we go. Wonder if no, it's not going to open better at the bottom. Okay, so maybe make sure you have your keys on you or something like that when you're at the store. Most people will have a way to tear off those tabs, right? Probably don't do what I just did. It didn't work that well. But does this come with the Bright Future? Kind of an interesting set-specific promo card. Kind of a good pre-release flavored card. It has, you have to be playing one of these characters, a very, weird niche effect that somebody's going to find a way to make a good use of this card, but it's not going to be absolutely everywhere. We have a little insert of, yeah, here's how to join the UGN. So some information on the pre-release, a cool include. QR code, because we're just going to be doing these on the fly at the store, and 6 packs. So, in a draft situation, at least for now, until people have maybe drafted this set more, if that is a thing that happens, the common wisdom is that so each time you open a pack, you're just going to take the character out of it. That's part of the new draft format, and at the end you'll have 6 characters to choose from, right? But your deck has to match a symbol. All the cards in your deck have to match at least one symbol with your character. You don't have to be a mono symbol deck or anything, but it does mean you can't just completely draft randomly all the way through. So what most people are thinking is that hopefully in one of your first 2 packs you pull a character that you think you can make work as a draft, and then you try to draft towards that character. And possibly somewhere in the second pack you might pick up a signal or something that the symbols you're going for just aren't going to be there, and maybe then you have to pivot and make something work. They just released a rules update. If you do end up in that situation, you don't actually have 40 valid cards you can play. You're allowed to put some face down cards in your deck, which means you have to be using sleeves, obviously, to do this. But you can take some face down cards and slot them in as blank 3 difficulty 4 check foundations that do not block. Cannot be used as blocks. Anything that references their block modifier is going to return a 0. There's some old rules around cards that don't have blocks, because that used to be a thing. That they might want to sort out, including for this, or give it some default block modifier. This is a new rule that they're just going to be learning on the fly with, but bottom line, you know, if you're 38 cards, you don't just have to be kicked out of the event. You can play a couple blanks and make it work. So we're sitting down for our draft, and we are very excited to check our character first, right? That's going to be important information. The first character we opened is definitely not an XR Crystal Clash, but that's pretty cool. Our Hijiki 10 guy. This guy's a very weird. He wants to get non-attack allies from his discard pile. Has a little discard ability on it. I mean, unless we really sell out to finding damage in the cards we draft, we're probably not going to want to play this guy. So, you know, when we see this guy, we're probably thinking like, okay, we're just going to try to draft the best cards for now out of this pack. And if it shares with 10 guy, then nice. And you know, we might be thinking about, you know, how much damage output we can find here. This pack is a little thin on attacks, right? We have single spiral with force of fuselage. Crystal Clash is a nice one. You know, it's a 2-low-5. It's got a nice block on it. It's stun 1. Mills you through your deck a little bit. That might actually be the card we end up taking here. Another thing you can do in draft is to prioritize spam to make sure you're getting up spam foundations. Nejiratron of the big 3 would be a valid choice. The one thing about this format, for the most part, the characters have relatively even access to the field, except for the Air Chaos, Nejire, and Amajiki have a little bit less card access. So if you can play that, you obviously can play their cards in other characters too. But it's just notable if you end up going down one of those characters' routes to be mindful and make sure that that's not drying up on you. But yeah, just looking at this, I think for my first pick, I would probably go ahead. You probably just want to keep an eye out for, you know, some good generic reusable stat bumps. Like Nejire Attack on the big 3 is not a bad choice at all. But I think in this situation, probably obviously we can't guarantee that we're wrap up for Hot Blood, so I'd probably go ahead and take the Crystal Clash out of this pack. And then, you know, presuming we've drafted a bunch of random cards or whatever, we'll open our second pack, and then, you know, hopefully this character's good enough that if we're forced into it, we can go with it. If it's not, you know, you'll be moving on the fly, and then we'll figure out our first pick as if it's our first pack, right? All right, in Kirishima, that is, you know, you'd rather be a pseudo, not actually blank 7-hander, right? He has text on him for sure, but a 7-hander that doesn't have a lot of text than a 6-hander that doesn't necessarily have a lot of text. So if we saw this guy, we'd probably try to go ahead and force those symbols. If we open him in our first pack, we'd try to draft towards him a little bit, but keep our mind open if we see a really good one. If this was our very first pack, ooh, we would draft probably this one. Probably for sure take this 6 difficulty, 7 damage throw. You know, maybe we scoff at this in Constructed, but throws in draft are good. Big attacks in draft are good. It happens to share with the character we opened, who does not necessarily have damage on them. If this is a low attack, if they partial block this thing, they're going to get completely dumpstered on. So a synergy with the character that we opened, and is also just a generally good card to have in a draft situation if we do end up pivoting. So a pick for this, definitely Duplicate Deception Stab. Put these somewhere. I don't have a whole lot of... Well, I've consumed a lot of my desk space with other things, I guess. Alright, so... New draft, let's say this is our first pack, and we're just going to evaluate this character again against the Vacuum. Ooh, we got a secret rare in our pre-release kit. Take those. Spear and Shield. We might just sort of shiny draft that if we're so inclined. Rikia! He's an interesting guy for draft. So if you're actually activating that that bottom enhance for large numbers, you might mill yourself out. You do cycle only 5 in draft instead of 10. This guy's like sneaky neat, I think. You might be able to get away with playing him if you found some of his support, and there might be like nobody else trying to use his support either. So you could be brave and sort of soft commit to trying to make sure you're lining up with this guy's symbols. He does have evil and life. He's got a good spread of symbols to just sort of be finding cards on. And our pick, if we're not SR drafting, let's see. None of these cards have Rakia Space on them, so we wouldn't be doing that. We might be... It does say if this attack deals damage, so he's kind of happy to see the throws. I don't know if he's so happy that he's playing a 3 damage throw here. That's not a bad one, it's just got the once per turn little speed hate on it. Let's see. We might even just play this as a card. Just to like get momentum on block, but probably not in our... Well, we're not necessarily guaranteed to be that 5-hander, but... Flurry of Punches might not be a bad draft card. Give you that late game reach, just make something freaking huge. Fat Grapple, also an option. You know, our guy is, what, Earth, Evil, Life, so he could play either of these attacks. You know, again, you don't want to get stuck without foundations, but you'd rather end up with like a 50% attack deck than a 20% attack deck, especially in draft. Your decks aren't like that optimized to find kills. So, you know, when in doubt, you can cheat towards attacks a little bit, but as the packs go on, you don't want to completely neglect your foundations. Ryugu Agency Trainees is a perfectly fine foundation to be grabbing. There aren't really any spams in this pack. I think given my druthers, I would probably take Flurry of Punches. It has EX, it gives me a momentum out too, which you can't always find in draft. And you'll just have that floating on, although that might be something people pass a lot. I'd stare at this pack for a while, basically, if I wasn't just SR drafting. That is an interesting one to mull over. Alright. Okay, this one. Oh, okay, well this makes our, you know, unless we think we're not going to get these symbols, if you open Nedjure, you should almost certainly play her. Stopping for breakfast. You know, just a -2 speed, +2 damage, some healing from, you know, there's not a whole lot of one-turn kill decks in draft. It's going to be a little bit complicated because it's sort of going to depend on how many Nedjures are opened on your table early on, but if you open her, she should be front of your mind. And, you know, again, keep an eye out on the symbols drying up, but, you know, we're here to play Nedjure, if at all possible. As for what card we take... Oh, let's see. We take just taking the Spam Foundation seems like it would be kind of a little bit lame. Plummeting Punch is a nice little 5-speed low. Nedjure's probably pretty happy to see that. Has a Deadlock ability on it. We might be going for Plummeting Punch here. In fact, I think that's what we would do. I would probably take Plummeting Punch in this deck, in this pack, and to start working towards Nedjure and, you know, keep an eye out on the symbols. And, you know, maybe, and if we spent our last few packs drafting Rikia cards, we should have some life symbol ones at least. So we'd be able to make that pivot. Character in this one, Shinnomoto. Yeah, this guy can just run a generic pile of cards just fine. Obviously, you're not going to have Overhaul starter deck here. So you're not going to have the most access to the Played Not From Your Hand theme, but, you know, 7 hand size with text is pretty fine in draft, so be happy to, like, air towards his symbols if this is our first pack, but again, we don't have to hard commit to it in pack 1. But, well, I mean, we would probably just take Larceny, though, right, to support this effort. We want all the Larcenies we can get if we're Shinnomoto. That's probably just what we're doing. Unless there's something... I Vast Hybrid's pretty good, too. Well, Vast Hybrid's going to do what Larceny does, right? Except with a little bit more reliability, more than twice per turn. So I may have jumped the gun a little bit. I would probably like think about my symbols and take one of these two. Vast Hybrid or Larceny here. Not that the attacks are bad. I mean, the attacks, there's some... Heart of Fist is fine. Insatiable, probably not that useful here. Centicoil, also kind of fine. Knuckle Sandwich we talked about earlier. But yeah, we'd see this pack, we'd be like, all right, we can do some Shindemoto and take maybe Vast Hybrid because it's a little more generic, but... And people will probably pass us Larcenies later too, right? I mean, that Larceny probably tables, to be honest. Unless people are just hunting spam. Last one. Fat Gum. If you open a Fat Gum in draft, that's going to make your life a little bit complicated. We would, if this was our second pack, we would just be sticking with Shindemoto and doing the best we can. You know, in that vein... Probably don't... I mean, Haymaker's kind of a funny card with Shindemoto, because if you put the 3 speed on it, it is now a 7 speed flash move. Which is pretty funny. You can even, like, lay it down in the middle late your turn, get a bunch of damage on it for passing the check. And Shin can play this, right? Yeah, so we might be in for Haymaker. It might depend on how many foundations we've gotten in the first pack. These foundations aren't necessarily mega interesting. But yeah, I might be leaning towards the Haymaker here. I think that's what we would probably do. And yeah, alright, so it was just a nice quick look at the pre-release pack, a little bit of foray into just a little bit of early draft thinking. I'm by no means it's not like I'm a draft... Not only have I obviously not drafted this set, I haven't like done a whole lot of draft in this game in general, but that's just sort of what I'd be thinking about if we were doing a pre-release draft. Yeah, so hope this was interesting. It's it was a lot of rambling, probably went on about an hour plus here, but yeah, I kind of like to do it this way, to do something more than just look at some shiny cards. And we got a Chronostasis trick. I'm pretty happy about that, and I'm genuinely pretty happy about that. That is going to make my collecting a little bit easier there for sure. Yeah, we'll be back with more news over the coming days. I definitely want to cover the rules updates for sure. But until then, check out your pre-release and hope everyone has a good time. All right, have a good night.